We're back on our road to somewhere big, hopefully some big PBs or a PB squat. Where we left this off most recently was the 245 kilos for a 3x5 on the back squat. So I was training with Tammy, one of Ireland's best weightlifters in Dublin. And since then, I've been moving that average lowest kind of weight for lowest working weight session at the 5x5 and 3x10s from 200 kilos to 100 kilos for sets of 10 after, to 210 to about 120 kilos for the sets of 10. So last 4 sessions, I've been doing 210 kilos, 5x5, and then up to 120 for sets of 10. Now, because I'm over that halfway hump, because I'm closer to where I need to be than I'm further, I figure I need something like 240 to probably 250 for sets of 5 to justify going for a PB or being relatively peaked or in a strong enough condition to hit a new PB. So I'm much closer to where I need to be than where I am. And so now is a good opportunity for me in this particular style of programming to start doing some singles. Now, you might remember from the Japan videos where we talked to Toshiki and I asked him, how did he peak for this? Did he do singles? Did he do anything different? Or did he just do those 5x5s all the way up? And from what he said, he just rested a week and then he went for that single at 321 kilos. Now, I looked through the YouTube, the training vlogs he has up around that period of time, and he's quite a number of those with the dates. And one of the things he did do was a top set of 5 at 270, closer to that. So he did do some very rudimentary form of peaking, but nothing crazy. And from the looks of it, he didn't do any or very few singles. It looks like he really did go for that. Now, I, like most people, can't just go from a top set of 5x5 or a PB 5x5, rest for a few days and then hit a massive single PR. Most people need that practice, and I'm in that, absolutely in that cohort where I need to practice those singles. And as I said, because I'm closer to the end of the training block than I am there to start, now is a pretty decent time to start practicing singles every so often. Not every week, maybe something like every 2 weeks or so, depending on how I'm feeling. And this session here is a top single at 260. Now for this session, again, the main thing wasn't to hit a PB or go balls out on something. It was literally practice some heavy singles, literally for the skill of doing heavy singles. So let's take a look. So this 260 is a 10 kilo progression on this training block. I won't say PB because it's not a personal best. It's a progression on my squat at the moment since the start of this training block. Funnily enough, I think I would have hit that very easily or more if I'd finished the RTA and peaked further out. But again, that's not the sole goal of this. This is to do the challenge as much as anything and also hit a PB. So hitting this 260 was perfectly adequate is how I would describe it. It's nothing amazing. I am happy I hit the 260, but there's a lot of stuff I need to work on and want to improve on. So we're just warming up, putting on the skinny reds, the metal 25s to make loading a little bit better at 260, as else I wouldn't be able to load it with the bumper plates that I have. So this session wasn't feeling amazing, but that's not a particular issue. I'd made the progressions that I needed, the 210 for sets of 5. And I actually felt better the day before, so I probably should have gone for it then, but it was more useful to get the working sets in, which will pay off later in the end than it was to do on this particular session. So I took a couple of attempts at 200 kilos just to give myself a little bit more time to acclimatize to the weight, warm up a little bit better. So hitting another single at 200 here and just trying to work on positions as much as possible. But I'm just not as powerful in this session. I'm a little bit looser in positions than I would like. So third single at 200, getting a little bit better, but the knee tracking isn't as good as I would like it to be. Upper back position isn't as good as I would like it to be. Grip is a little bit too loose. So that single at 220 was fine. And then we move on to 240, which was probably one of the better reps. As I did this 240, I'd actually considered going for sets of 5 again at 240, but given that the plan was to go for single, I stuck with it and moved on to 250. Now, if the first 250 had been better, I probably would have left it there or maybe gone to 260 straight away. But I was really unhappy with the positions on this first and second 250. The knee tracking wasn't great, upper back positions wasn't great. The torso angle, which you'd see from the side, was slightly inclined and there was too much flexion in my upper back, and I was not happy with that. Now, this third single at 250, however, I was very happy with. So positionally, it was much better. And this is the reason I'm practicing these singles, to give myself an opportunity to refine the technique of heavy singles, which is, of course, different to multiple sets of 5x5. So quite happy with that. Positionally, you can see the hands and back stayed much tighter. So I pushed on to a single at 260 just to, the damage had been done in terms of the fatigue from heavier reps. So I said I'd march on through and get a little 260. So reasonably happy with that. Again, perfectly adequate. Bar speed is fine. Positions were okay. They were better than the first 250, which is great. And most importantly from this, there's a couple of things I need to work on. Upper back position, keeping the shoulder blades closer together, keeping my wrist in a straighter line here instead of flexing it here or letting go even, or flaring my hips, flaring my elbows back. I need to keep this in a nice straight line, which keeps my upper back much tighter. So from here, I will continue to progress with the 5x5. I'm going to add in a bit more assistance work, so you can see a little bit of a hip shift. And as I mentioned, a little bit of hip pain. And I've been doing a lot of single work the last few sessions, and it's definitely exposing some issues. So I'll add those in. Still working on the overhead mobility and working on the elbow stuff, but haven't seen as much progression on that, as I still need to go see someone to get some actual just physical therapy done on it to work through some of the issues. Very little Olympic lifting at the moment, as obviously the weights are pretty heavy. So it's mostly 5 sessions of squatting, 2 sessions of jiu-jitsu, 2 sessions of sprinting on the same day as the jiu-jitsu, and then approximately 5 days then on the squatting days I do 25 to 30 minutes of cardio after the session, and I've added a little bit more upper body hypertrophy work and back work and the single leg work because of the stuff I've been doing. It's relatively low fatigue per session. The accumulation is a lot more fatiguing, but given that I'm not doing a whole lot of Olympic lifting just right now, I can afford to do some of the extra bodybuilding and I have the freshness. So goal is to keep pushing that moving average up primarily, and then I will, once I'm pretty confident I'm ready, I will go for the 240 for the full sets of 5x5 then, and then I will assess where I am at. Now, some good training vlogs coming up in the next week and a week and a half, so in 2 weeks time I'll be training with Yasmin Stevens and hopefully getting some sessions in with Gabriel as well. So look forward to those while I'll still be squatting, and 2 great weightlifters there. I know Gabriel has started up another bit of a training block, which is great, and of course Yasmin is in great shape currently. So look forward to that. Training vlogs, I'm certainly looking forward to that. And some of the assistance work, just to list them, what I'm doing is band distracted split squats, so no feet elevated, the band pulling my knees both internally and externally. They are currently unweighted, and I just want to move through the movement. Given that the right hand side, which is slightly sore, when it's the back leg, does actually experience a little bit of pain. Not the pain of an injury, but the pain of something that's incredibly unaccustomed to that particular position or needs some work on it. So currently they're unweighted. Hip clams, which get much smoother by the end of a couple of sets of the hip clams, which is quite interesting. Then I'm doing some unweighted step ups, which actually do recreate the pain in the hip flexor. So it is something that I think is probably just needs a bit more work on. Then upper body stuff is rows, plenty of rows, lots of pullover, single arm pullovers with plates. That's primarily expose the soft tissues in my shoulder to some extreme range of motion, which they have. I think it lost a little bit, as I mentioned, from the jiu-jitsu to weightlifting. You've heard me talk about this before, so I want to recondition those to the more extreme ranges of motion, but still being underweight and being more active with those particular positions. Upper body stuff then is push-ups, shoulder raises, rear delt flies, rows, as I mentioned, and a lot more core work at the moment as well. So looking at this, doing a lot more obliques, So side bends are primarily my favorite stuff. Generally at a kettlebell, but once the kettlebell gets a bit easier, which is very easy at the moment, but once I acclimatize to it, I'll move to a heavier barbell and hold it like a suitcase deadlift. And then just crunches and sit-ups currently for the anterior section. I probably need to add in a bit more upper back work in terms of static hold, so I probably need to add in the upper back isometric prone back extensions on the floor, and hopefully we'll see that transfer over to a bit more stability in the actual squat positions at the heavier weights, as it's definitely something that I needed to work on a little bit sooner, but we're getting it done now. So I hope you enjoyed the training vlog and happy with the progress. We're going in the right direction. Never as happy as you could be, or never as happy as I would like to be, but it is certainly going, so I cannot complain, because if it's moving in the right direction, that's all that currently matters. So I hope you enjoyed them, and thank you for watching training vlogs, and I'll see you in the next training vlog.